Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, the host for your show today, and also the co-founder of Corporate Board Member magazine. So you're going to hear a little noise because we're here at the Diligence Director Experience in Napa Valley, and we're actually filming a show at the cocktail hour, so we may have a little bit of noise, but I have a great guest and a great topic. Today we're going to talk about what boards should know about the SEC's Investor Advisory Committee. And joining me is a member of that committee, Anne Sheehan, who's a member of SEC's Investor Advisory Committee and former head of corporate governance at CalSTRS, and also a recent board member at L Brands. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We've known each other for a long time, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So, first question, though, is after a very respected career as head of the governance for CalSTRS, the people that should know that, the California Teachers Giant Pension Fund, you were invited to serve on the SEC's Investor Committee. But I'm not sure that board members know exactly what the SEC's Investor Committee is. So could you explain what it is and what it means to corporate boards?
Sure. So the Investor Advisory Committee was created under Dodd-Frank, which passed in 2011. And it was created as a committee to provide advice and recommendation to the Commission on issues of interest to investors. Investor protection issue, market trading issues, market strategies, as well as recommendations on enhancing the trust of investors in the marketplace. Obviously, coming out of the financial crisis, a lot of investors pulled their money out and were worried about the markets. And so the Investor Advisory Committee, which came about as I said, as a part of Dodd-Frank, was created as a way to provide recommendations, advice, findings to the Commission on behalf of investors. There are 22 members of the Investor Advisory Committee representing a cross-section of the markets. There are a couple of statutory slots, someone from a senior organization representing older Americans, someone from a state securities regulator, so to complement the work of the Commission at the state level on securities regulation. And then also the investor advocate is statutorily assigned to the committee, and the investor advocate was created as part of Dodd-Frank also. So I was fortunate enough to be named one of the first members of the committee by then Chair Mary Shapiro, and then was reappointed by Mary Jo White 3 years ago. And today I'm fortunate to chair the committee, so it's kept me busy for the last 7 years.
So what should boards know about what comes out of the committee? How does it sort of impact them?
It really affects them in a variety of ways. One, boards that may be in financial services companies, whether they be broker-dealers or investment advisors, would be wise to look at the recommendations. We have done 21 recommendations since our founding in 2012, and they run the gambit from municipal bond markets to retail investor fraud, to support for the universal proxy card, which obviously board members would care about. One of our most recent recommendations was on human capital management disclosure, encouraging the Commission to look at more disclosures from boards on how they manage human capital as part of their board oversight. So what we like to say is that human capital is one of the best assets of a corporation, yet investors, the only information they have to receive now, as required by the SEC, is the number of employees. So some companies do well on disclosing how they manage their human capital, their personnel, because obviously it's very important to the running of a company, and board members should have an important role in how human capital is managed. But one of the recommendations was to require more disclosure. So that would be an issue that would be of interest to board members. We've just recently did one again for the financial services industry on the Reg Best Interest, which was just approved today by the Commission, which is the enhanced fiduciary obligation of broker-dealers and investment advisors. We've also done some on dual-class shares. I know there are a lot of companies that have dual-class share structures. Some shareholders don't like them, but we've recommended the Commission do a little more disclosure around those. Are there enhanced risks related to that? Do investors understand when they're buying dual class share company what it means? They may not have the same rights they would in other ones. So there are a variety of recommendations that we have come up with that would definitely be of interest to corporate directors as we're sort of looking at what's coming next out of the Securities Commission.
So I have to ask this question, so it's all investor representation, is there any balance?
Yes. There is an issuer represented because it's important to have the issuer on there also. The only constraint is the issuer representative cannot be the chair of the committee. They want an investor or someone who represents an investment fund, or like I did at CalSTRS, chairing the committee because it is the investor advisory. But we actually have a very balanced group now that runs the gamut from issuers to some academics. We have an individual from the Cato Institute on there. We have somebody who's from the University of Virginia, who is the dean of the law school there. So a very good cross-section. Someone from, used to be the general counsel of Vanguard, Capital Group. We really have a good cross-section of representatives bringing their perspective to the discussions.
Well, knowing you, I know you will do a cracker job as the chair, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But there's something before you leave that I also really wanted to ask you, knowing you as long as I have. So here you are spending a good part of your career, okay, meeting with boards, sometimes passively, sometimes not so passively, okay, sort of expressing to them sort of where you think they need help or where they need guidance, or flatly just what they're doing wrong, okay? So all of a sudden, now you find yourself on the other side of the table, okay? So tell me what that experience has been like for you.
Well, it's been an interesting experience. As you know, I was just elected to the L Brands board this past month, and so now being on the inside is going to have a whole new perspective as a longtime investor advocate, because you're right, I spent a lot of time with board members talking to them about the role they play and how they represent the shareholders inside that boardroom, and what an important role that the directors play inside that boardroom. And not just representing shareholders in the boardroom, representing all the shareholders of the company. So what I'm looking forward to is bringing my experience and the perspective as an investor advocate into the boardroom and really learning from my fellow board members how I can be the most impactful as a new board member. I bring governance expertise, obviously, from the 10 plus years I was at STRS, and I hope that that will help educate my fellow board members on some of the issues that shareholders care about from a governance perspective now. As you know, the landscape has changed dramatically in the past 10 years on corporate governance issues. And so I think L Brands brought me on as someone who could help them see what those changes are and navigate through some of those changes. So I'm very excited about the opportunity. It's a great company, great history in that company. It's a retail company, so the whole retail industry is undergoing great transformation. So I'm looking forward to bringing my perspective in there.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a matter of time till you'll be the chair of the Nom-Gov committee. And I can't wait for your first visit by a shareholder at an engagement, okay?
Thank you.
With you on the other side of the table.
I'm looking forward to that. I am on the Nominating and Governance Committee at L Brands, so looking forward to seeing it from the inside.
Well, Anne, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know this is a pretty wild setting here in the middle of a cocktail hour, but I appreciate all your comments, and thanks for taking the time to join us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for all the hard work.
Yep. And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.